Hi everyone, we're back. I'm Seth Holler, CEO of Wiser Systems.
I'm Logan Maxwell, wearer of many hats.
And previously we talked about process improvement and automation, and we went through some terms.
Right.
Automation obviously being one of them, RTLS, real-time location systems, another one, RFID being another one, and then digital twin. So with that established, we wanted to talk a little bit about those terms in the context of what?
Yes, of RTLS, which is a term that we defined. So hopefully no one left that video more confused. But essentially now we're trying to speak about this technology, which is RTLS, real-time location systems,
Right.
which could be thought of under the umbrella of RFID, right? But how that's used for and in conjunction with automation and digital twin efforts.
Right.
So we can start on the automation side. Now, again, it's hard to boil this down because a lot of this is process dependent, right? So different facilities have different ways that items flow through. But when we talk about improving and automating in these, we're usually talking about more mixed batch, intermediate, cellular based manufacturing facilities.
Okay, well, we threw a lot of terms in there. So,
Blast.
mixed, batched, did you say
Yeah,
intermediate?
intermediates,
And
bespoke,
Bespoke.
it's cellular based. I mean, essentially means if you're making the same item over and over and over again on an assembly line,
same widget,
same widget,
linear process.
a real-time location system may be of benefit for your material handling equipment, maybe some AGV carriers for collision detection, safety, but it won't probably lend as much ROI because you have everything quite literally on rails.
So if you're making the same thing and it's following the same manufacturing process, you tend to not lose as many items, and there's less, for lack of a better word, chaos in your manufacturing process.
And there's probably some people watching that say, no, it's chaotic, but it's chaotic for different reasons, right? And so when you're automating, your definition of automation may be that you're going to automate one step on that line, on that assembly line. And even that can shave off a lot of time in your process.
Sure. And certainly at each station, you need to stage the different materials at that station. Then suddenly that particular aspect is no longer linear because now you're dependent on multiple things being there at the same time.
Right, right. And so there's aspects of all facilities that have parts that are straight through online and parts that are going to be where you're shuffling, mixed batch inventory. What we're speaking towards in this in RTLS is usually going to be more so on the cellular based, mixed, bespoke, like I'm making a subassembly of an item, right? I have multiple parts coming together to make that. They all have to fit. If one doesn't, what do? I don't scrap that subassembly. I send that part back to get fixed and I set it aside. You're probably nodding your head right now if this happens in your factory. That's where we start talking about RTLS and automating some of those procedures, right?
So when you set aside a part or a subassembly, it really, the gatekeeper is on that part that's missing that needs to be remanufactured or reshipped to you. And so that time impacts basically there's a chance that you lose track of where that subassembly is.
Yeah. You're automatically losing time, but you also might lose a track of it, right? So the RTLS in one way can at least tell you where everything is, right? But if we go one deeper and start to automate that process, well, I've set this aside for rework. How does that happen in your facility? And this is where the answers start to go crazy, because I go to some facilities and they're like, well, we get on the radio and we call Steve, right?
So
and that's
very manual process,
right, that's
not automated.
Exactly. It's completely not automated. And in others, they'll say, well, we're going to type it into our ERP system. Well, slightly more automated if you think about it, but it's still manually typing. And so when you start thinking about ways you could use RTLS, just for this one example, if you have an area that your rework is set at, RTLS knows that you've set it in rework and it knows exactly what the work is that's there. Okay. And so you can set off a chain of reactions that will happen through your ERP system, through everywhere in your facility to say, this is getting reworked. It just got put here to the second of when it happens.
Okay, we should take a step back just so that everyone understands this.
Never. Always onward.
So you have a facility. This part is suddenly designated as rework.
Sure.
There has been no manual input yet. There is a zone here. This part moves over into the zone, and the system, the computer, the digital twin understands that suddenly, since it's in this zone, it's a rework part, and it can trigger other parts within your other events within your ERP,
right,
to designate that as rework.
Yes.
And that will trigger kind of various other items, whatever is necessary in the process, so that you can account for that rework. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Essentially,
I don't know if I explained it any clearer, but I definitely explained it in a different way.
Yes. So, and this is just kind of an arbitrary example, but I guess what we're getting at is with a lot of automation steps, you can take a manual process and add in, right? So welding, manual process. There's a big push, of course, to have automated welding, makes less mistakes, takes less time, right? And so that is a classic example of automation. But where none of this classic automation talk has is location data. Location data is absent from a lot of these discussions because it's historically, up until Wiser, been a very difficult thing to provide.
Well, there's been proximity detection, single point proximity, like RFID gateways or portals, right? So you know at some point in time a tag passed through a portal, but you do not have the continuous real-time location. It passed through the portal and went down to aisle 5 and turned left and stayed there for approximately 10 minutes before someone nudged it out of the way, right?
Yeah, right.
And that provides a lot of insight into how the movement within the facility works. And so what? Right. So stuff moved around. How in the world is that related to automation or process improvement, which is what I talked about before?
Right. So if you use this location data to start to automate some of these steps, it all comes back to timing. It's the same reason that it's important for process improvement. It's all timing. You're trying to shave time off doing these things, right? And time could be, you might be right on it, right? And going to grab that thing, right? I went and grabbed it. I'm reworking it. I'm putting it right back on the line, right? But that, if you can automate that process, you're going to shave out that time. RTLS also provides you right where that item is at that time. So going to find it and look for it is also shaved down as well. So it works in both ways. But in terms of, that's just one example of automation. I mean, we can go much further down the line in that way, but maybe we talk about that in context of digital twin as well if we want to. But
okay, last question here is for automation. We of course talked about the location and shaving off timing. So it's important to shave off timing that everyone knows in the manufacturing industry because that equates to production efficiency or overall throughput.
Right.
That's right?
Yes. Essentially, it can be, somewhat simplified into how many widgets you're producing. I mean, you might only make one per week, or you might make 5,000 a day. Right. But the time it takes and the inputs into that, whether it's raw material or other things, are what impact what you get out. And a lot of times, time is one of the most important things for getting that number up. You can certainly buy more.
Because you have the same number of machines for a given time, same number of people on the floor for a given time. But if you can make more, minus whatever material cost you have, that's overall win.
It's an overall win for everyone involved. And so automate, you have to think about it before we leave this topic, like automation, when in talking in the location at RTLS, you're talking time and position, and you can automate. Just brainstorm as far down as you want to go what that means for your facility. Because in a lot of places, it means that when somebody takes a work item and puts it on a machine, We know it's on that machine. We know the location has changed and we know the time. That deletes a scan. It deletes any human process. Right?
And it could start a trigger of staging events so that you get the machine up and running sooner, shaving off minutes, seconds, hours.
We've automated the scan in and scan out, right? Because we know where the work order is or the part or the piece is. We know that it got loaded onto that machine. We know that it hit buffer. It doesn't even have to be loaded into a machine. Your process might have some Kanban areas or areas where you're wheeling in your bins or your carts into a subsection of your facility that's waiting for a new process. Well, it might sit there for a long time. If you know the location and the time of that, you can have countdown timers and clickers of where those things are and when. That's not a scan that you can automate. You can't automate that scan because no one's scanning it. They're just shoving it into this area.
Right.
But with an RTLS system, it's constantly being scanned. It's like, think of it as a barcode scan constantly, all the time, everywhere. So anywhere you put it, it's scanned into that location. No person needs to do it. So in a way, that automation, its position and its timing of everything through the facility.
I really like that thought process. Like, think of RTLS as for every tag, it's constantly being scanned all the time without someone needing to scan it,
right,
no matter where it is.
Right. And so instead of, a lot of people are tracking this flow and tracking their timing and their position based off of static fixed points in the procedure. I am at step 1, I scan. Okay, I've got a time and a position.
Right.
Right? And then I scan it 2, if I remember. I scan, which is another problem. But if they remember to scan it, I've got another time and position. And think about that as a scatter plot, right? X, Y. I've got dot, dot, dot. Well, I think my line goes like this.
So, but throughout the day, you might have 5 scans,
total,
the facility.
Exactly.
As opposed to, I don't know, 1,000 scans?
It depends on what you set your ping rate to of your tag. But I'm sure that's for another blog post.
Okay.
In terms of data fidelity.
We'll stop for now and take a break, but we'll be back later. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you.